May 28th, 1968, Joe Borg's criminal chapter came to a violent, explosive end. It wasn't a back alley shooting or a street brawl. It was a sophisticated, premeditated act of assassination that sent shockwaves through Sydney. The morning of the murder, Borg was at his house in Brighton Boulevard, North Bondi. This wasn't Palmer Street. This was a respectable, affluent suburb, a sign of Borg's successful ascent, or at least his attempt at a more legitimate veneer. He had only lived there for a few weeks, having recently moved, perhaps seeking to distance himself from the direct grit of his operations. He was painting the front room with a friend named Ben Zamet, a seemingly innocuous domestic scene for a man living on the edge. Around 11 a.m., Borg went to his 1961 Holden utility van, a common, unassuming vehicle, often used for trades, but in this case, a mobile death trap. He was driving off, presumably to get more paint, a mundane errand that would become his last. The moment he turned the ignition, a massive bomb detonated. The device, which had been placed beneath the driver's seat, was constructed with a chilling sophistication, utilizing a powerful mix of explosives and shrapnel. According to later court evidence, the bomb utilized 9 sticks of dynamite and nuts and bolts, a crude but incredibly effective fragmentation device. Other sources suggest it contained 3 to 5 pounds of gelogine, a powerful industrial explosive. The intent was not just to kill, but to utterly destroy. Image: a dramatic, slightly stylized depiction of a 1961 Holden utility van exploding, showing smoke and debris, with a hint of suburban background. The force of the explosion ripped the vehicle apart. Debris was scattered across Brighton Boulevard, turning a quiet street into a scene of carnage. Borg was fatally wounded, suffering unimaginable injuries that destroyed the lower half of his body and severed his right leg. It was a gruesome, horrific death. His friend Ben Zamet, showing incredible courage and perhaps a desperate sense of loyalty, managed to drag the dying Borg from the burning utility. Borg died shortly after, en route to St. Vincent's Hospital in the ambulance, leaving behind a trail of smoke, blood, and unanswered questions. His last moments would have been agonizing, a brutal testament to the savagery of the underworld he inhabited. The web of hatred and the price of power. Borg's sudden, violent death immediately threw the spotlight onto the ongoing turf war in Sydney's notoriously brutal vice scene. His substantial profits had triggered a continuing struggle for control over the Doors area in Darlinghurst. This wasn't just about money, it was about power, territory, and a deep-seated resentment that simmered beneath the surface of Sydney's criminal element. Police soon began pursuing the theory that Borg was murdered by business rivals, a common conclusion when a kingpin is taken out. But the motives ran deeper than simple rivalry. Crucially, Borg was despised by many in his own community. He was hated by fellow Maltese men because, as one police statement put it, he had robbed the boys, girls, working on the door. This implies he was not just renting rooms, but potentially taking a cut from their earnings, or perhaps muscling in on established operations run by other Maltese individuals. Detective Sergeant L.W. Bates, CIB, testified that a group of Maltese men who knew Borg were visibly hostile toward him, allegedly spitting on the floor and making dirty remarks when his name was mentioned, demonstrating they were dead set dirty on him. This wasn't just professional rivalry, it was personal, fueled by a sense of betrayal and injustice within a close-knit immigrant community. The motive appeared financial and retributive, potentially orchestrated as a contract killing. Detective Sergeant F. Charlton stated he had received information that a man named Charlie Borg, a common surname within the Maltese community, but not necessarily a relative, was allegedly prepared to pay $2,000 to have Joe Borg killed. $2,000 in 1968 was a significant sum, enough to entice desperate men. Paul Mifsud, one of the later charged men, described the supposed benefactor as a slave, very mean man, suggesting a figure known for his ruthless nature. Mifsud also admitted that he and Paul Attard thought about shooting Borg but decided that was too dangerous because Borg carried a gun all the time, leading them to seek instructions on how to make a bomb instead. This reveals a chilling pragmatism. They weighed the risks of a direct confrontation against the calculated, impersonal violence of an explosive device. They sought out specialized knowledge, transforming a desperate idea into a deadly plan. A tangled web of informants and underworld figures. The subsequent investigation, riddled with underworld informants and conflicting testimonies, eventually led to the arrests of 3 men in August 1968, 2 Maltese men and their alleged instructor. Mifsud, 29, a waiter from Annandale, Maltese. Paul Attard, 24, a painter and docker from Newtown, Maltese. Keith Kyler, 50, a waiter from King's Cross. Kyler was also known as Joe Condon O'Brien, or the Jitterbug Kid, a moniker hinting at a past as a dancer, or perhaps his nervous energy. Palo was charged with inciting, aiding, counseling, and commanding the 2 Maltese men to commit murder. Detective Sergeant Bates alleged in court that Kalo admitted that Mifsud and Attard had told him they wanted to kill Borg. Kalo claimed that the 2 men, who it was in the fell, whom he knew only as Wah. It asked him how to make a bomb because they were going to blow Borg up in his car. Kalo confessed to police that he had helped prepare the bomb, knowing it was intended for Borg. Kalo identified Mifsud and Attard from photographs, seemingly sealing their fate. The investigation revealed that Kalo himself had a problematic relationship with police, a classic underworld informant. He was declared an habitual criminal in 1962, a term given to repeat offenders, and at the time of the bombing, he was in custody on an unrelated stabbing charge. This is where the story takes another murky turn. Detective Sergeant L.W. Bates arranged Keeler's release, securing bail from notorious underworld figure Leonard McPherson, known as the Godfather of the Cross. Kalo was then operating as a police spy in the Borg investigation, a classic double agent scenario. It was Kalo who informed Bates that Mifsud and Robert Lawrence Jackie Steele, known as Iron Man, were responsible for planning Borg's execution. And, ironically, Kalo himself was later charged as an accessory, caught in the very web he helped weave. Despite the conflicting accounts, the dubious involvement of a police informant, and the always present shadows of underworld machinations, the court proceedings resulted in convictions. The 2 Maltese men, Paul Mifsud and Paul Attard, were sentenced to life imprisonment. Keith Keylor received a 7-year sentence for his role. However, even with the convictions, considerable doubt remained regarding the identity of the killer's employer. The mean man Charlie Borg was never definitively linked to the crime in a way that led to conviction, and the deeper currents of who truly ordered Joe Borg's execution remained, and largely remain, a mystery. Was it a direct rival, or a group of resentful men from his own community, tired of his dominance? The official record provided answers, but the underworld whispers continued. Borg's murder did not stabilize the vice scene. Instead, the battle for control of the doors intensified. The removal of the king created a power vacuum, leading to even more desperate and violent struggles for dominance. The period following the killing saw a flare-up of violence, including death threats made against Sydney's well-known Vice Queen, Tilly Devine, who subsequently vacated her Palmer Street terrace. Even hardened figures like Devine, who had reigned for decades, recognized the shifting, more brutal landscape. Between September and December 1968, a mere few months after Borg's death, 7 terraces used as brothel houses in the Doors area were burned out in arson attacks, frequently set with petrol. This was a clear message, a violent cleansing of the old order, signaling a new, more ruthless approach to territory. The violence extended overseas, showing the far reach of these criminal vendettas. Emmanuel Micallef, a former associate of Borg who had fled Sydney to Malta after being stabbed during the brothel battles, was himself killed by a bomb planted in his car in Valletta, Malta, only a few months after Borg's death. This suggests a pattern of revenge, a long memory in the underworld, and perhaps a connection between the Sydney and Maltese criminal elements. But in a strange, almost unbelievable twist of fate, the final, most enduring part of Joe Borg's story was revealed through his will. Despite his life of vice and violence, Joe Borg, the Sydney Borg brothel king, showed a surprising and tender side. He left all of his substantial assets, accumulated from his illicit empire, to the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, RSPCA. This bequest was made specifically on the condition that the RSPCA care for his Alsatian dog and his 4 cats for the remainder of their natural lives. The MWSL RSPCA, after much deliberation and undoubtedly some moral hand-wringing, accepted the bequest, which included funds generated from the sale of his 14 brothels. They eventually realized about $50,000 from the sale of his properties and assets, a substantial windfall. Notably, the RSPCA's Victorian chapter, perhaps more conservative or simply wanting to avoid the controversy, refused any money from the sale, highlighting the ethical dilemma of accepting funds from such a source. At Borg's graveside, a testament to this unexpected legacy, were 23 floral tributes, the largest of which was sent by the USSW RSPCA, bearing the inscription, "In gratitude from all the homeless animals." It's an almost poetic irony. A man who profited from human vice, finding his most sincere legacy in the care of animals. The murder of Joe Borg marked a dark turn in Sydney's criminal history, revealing a brutal struggle for control over illicit profits, funded by dynamite, guts, and bolts. It was a story of ambition, betrayal, and a violent power vacuum that left a city scarred. But perhaps the most enduring part of the brothel king's tale is the one that reminds us that even in the darkest corners of human endeavor, there can be unexpected flashes of kindness, culminating in one of the most bizarre and heartwarming charitable legacies in underworld history. Join us next time on This Organized Crime, as we uncover another hidden chapter of Australia's past.